Cranking on.
We're here, people. We are here. And Scott barely made it, and I was actually later because
remember when I used to be the one that had a hard time getting all this shit turned on?
I didn't have a hard time. I blame StreamYard. It said there was a timeout at the website, at the server. Oh, well. How you guys feeling? You ready to go? We got people already waiting, expecting us to be doing our deal. So
play the music. Let's go.
Even my mom's texting me, asking me where it was.
All right.
Dang.
It's here. It's here. And here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. Sorry about that, people. It happens. The server wasn't me. All right. Welcome into the Bite Me podcast. It is happening. It is happening this week. It is happening this Saturday. And we got some topics for you as well. We're going to do our regular podcast. I'm John Lopez. That is Captain Dean Thomas. That is Captain Scott Knoll. And what's happening this week is the Bite Me feeding frenzy. And this has been the last couple of weeks has been the chaos before the storm, but it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope everybody is out there. Hope everybody understands. You know what, Dean, I'm going to start with you. Are you a luminary? Because I posted on the Facebook page, we're going to have some luminaries at the feeding frenzy.
Google it.
What? Can you spell it?
If you can't spell it, you're probably not one.
Luminary.
We're gonna have some luminaries. We're gonna have some luminaries at the feeding frenzy. The reason I said that is Scott, I know you're going to be excited about this. He's a great dude and he's a legend. I got a text today from Mark Nichols over at DOA. He says, "Flying in for the feeding frenzy, man. I'm flying in." I was like, cool. Well, all right.
Yeah, he got a hold of me last week asking if he could come fishing with me. So I don't know if he's coming or not. I told him he could come on Friday.
Yeah, he said he's flying in Thursday night. So he is a luminary. Dean, are you a luminary? Have you looked at it? Have you Googled it?
Yeah. No.
No, I'm not.
No. I have not achieved the luminary status that, of course, Scott Knoll and John P. Lopez have.
Yeah, right. Well,
I'm just fortunate enough to ride along on y'all's coattails.
Scott's a luminary. He looks like a luminary. You got that.
He's such a luminary. He glows. Look at him.
That's called sweat because he was sweating it in, stuck in that traffic out there. You thought you were back in Houston for a second.
Man, it sucked. All of a sudden, there's all this construction and stuff. I'm like, what the hell? I'm in Port O'Connor.
That shows you what's happening to Port O'Connor. They're building a superhighway to your neighborhood.
Yeah, you're going to be going to the Costco in no time. So, but we have that. And the reason I said that also is not just, because we got our guys and I think Dean is downplaying it. But anybody who goes out there, you're going to be able to talk to some of the best. They're going to be you can't throw a rock without hitting somebody who knows something about the intricacies of this industry. I mean, just look at the sponsors and the people that are going to be there from not just DOA but the boat yard. You have questions about that? Obviously, Freedom Boats. Some of the guys from Shimano, Anglers Anonymous, Fishing Tackle Unlimited. You'll see the list, but the best part.
Forget the people you're going to see. The prize packages are ridiculous.
They're just stupid. It's so good.
Why would you want to see any of these people when you can win a multitude of prizes?
Yeah, and they just keep coming in. You brought a palm tree. Who wants a palm tree? We got a palm tree that's worth about $1,200 that we got added. Yeah. We got obviously the big prize is the $70,000 Freedom Commander.
A $2,500 coupon for aluminum work over here in Rockport.
How about that?
That's crazy.
That alone.
Crazy. At Slickwater.
Yeah.
Slickwater. Aluminum guys. Yeah.
Rods, you can't. Every big time rod is going to be there that you're going to have a chance to either silent auction or raffle, or.
And I hope you did I hope you did an inventory on all that stuff you piled up in my room back there, because I'm just saying a lot of stuff goes in and out that door every day.
I'm just saying.
It's hard to differentiate which one is mine and maybe not mine.
Well, you know me as well or better than most.
Yeah,
I have done an inventory.
There's an inventory.
I've done an inventory. I've got the list. I've alphabetized all the guests. We got the tickets done. We got everything.
Did you seriously alphabetize the guests?
Yes, I did. Hey, I'm Scott. No, boom, there you are. Here's your 4 tickets. Let's go. All that stuff. So we're good to go, man. I think the weather's gonna be great, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we get to what would everyone do here. And it's not just a boat, like I said. You know, every alternate raffle prize is going to be worth at least $1,000 of gear and equipment and stuff like that. And I do want to say this. Where are our people that are wanting to buy some of these things? We'll put the list together, and it'll be obviously there. Bring a little extra cash, a little jingle in your pocket, because it is for 2 terrific causes, and we know that with Texas Boys Outdoors and Heroes on the Water. And there's going to be a sign at the entrance. I made a sign, big, vinyl banner, Bite Me Podcast, Feeding Frenzy. Make sure you go in that gate. Because that gate, we don't want you going in where the restaurant is and muddling things up right there. So we're going to have some good stuff. Scott, what are you going to do with the boat that you win? You're going to win a boat? You got more than you know what to do with. You got more boats than you know what to do with.
My driveway's kind of full.
You only got 80 acres. Dean, what are you going to do with the boat you win?
I want that palm tree. I got enough boats. I'm cool on boats. I want that palm tree. I need that $2,500 aluminum work so I can put some more stuff on my boat. I don't know, man. I don't even remember how much is on the list. I could go for a weekend in Rockport getaway.
We got 2 of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got.
And then I could win a fishing trip with myself.
Who doesn't want to do that? And I am cooking a brisket again for one of the live auction items. So we'll have a brisket for that. But since we're here, I'll go through some of these, not all of them, because they're still coming in. As you just mentioned that, and the aluminum works, ground hunting blind from Mossy Oak, Waterloo casting rod, Daiwa SV casting reel, drift socks, that's logo, drift sock box, that's logoed from John Parkoff, 2-night stay in Key Allegro, another 2-night stay in Key Allegro, adjustable trailer hitch, Sims waders, we got 2 of those. A custom Laguna Bite Me logo. It says Bite Me on the rod itself, a wading rod. Shimano reels. We got the Metanium. We got other stuff. The Bates reel. We've got an oil painting that is a one of a kind oil painting from Mitch Oviat. We've got Texas Boys Outdoors cooler, Belleville Meat Market, Wade Wright Extreme Packages, Temple Fork Outfitters rod of choice. Now, this is an interesting one. Now, anybody listening to this, and Scott, you can attest to this. He said, Jim Shulin, I was on the phone with him. He said, make it rod of choice. That way they can get a fly rod. They can get an offshore rod. Man, we're talking about $1,000 maybe in one rod, right?
It could get on up there, yeah. Choose wisely.
Yeah, choose wisely, and all kinds of other stuff. So be sure to get there 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. But let's get on with it, man. Let's get on with how this podcast became what it is now and why we're so thankful. And that's the last thing I want to say on this is a thank you for our listeners. We want you to bring your money. We want you to bring your luck for the raffles. We want you to help these great organizations. But one of the reasons I've been doing it we did this last 2 years, calling it the Feeding Frenzy. First 200 people that register, we got your meal covered, man. It's a thank you. It's going to be mixing and mingling, camaraderie, asking questions of some great fishing people out there, guides like our guys here, and others are going to be there as well. It's just a thank you to the great listeners that are out here and listening and making the Bite Me podcast the #1 podcast. Some would argue in the country, but definitely on the Gulf Coast. So it's exciting, and we will see you there on Saturday. It's going to be great weather. All right. So we got some questions from the listeners, and let's get into the podcast portion of this. And one listener said, and I know we've talked about this before, but I like the way he put the question on this. Scott, I'm going to start with you. He said, sometimes I feel like I know it's time to throw in the towel and move on, or find another tactic or whatever. He says, what happens when you know that your confidence is high? You're seeing bait. There's fish there. How long do you beat your head against the wall there before you decide the bait is just lying and that spot is just lying to you?
And if I got all the stuff that's looking good, I'm staying. I'm going to keep at it until I just run out of water.
Until I run out of water. So like what you're saying.
And if I run out of Copenhagen and water, I mean, we're done. That's the end of it.
Well, that's an answer.
There ain't no Dr. Peppers left in the cooler. There's nothing left. It's time to go then. But no, I mean, if all the signs are there, I mean, there's really no reason to move on. I mean, the places I fish, I see the fish, and Dean too. We both see our fish. So if all that's looking good, but you're not seeing the game fish, then you'd move. And go try to find an area similar to that's got holding bait and it's got redfish in it. But if you're just blind casting and you're seeing everything's looking good, keep switch up some lures, switch your tactics, maybe throw a popping cork. I don't know.
And so today, man, that's an interesting question for my fishing trip this morning. So we're out there and we're fishing. We're throwing top waters. And then one of the dudes on the boat that was with me, we were getting blow-ups that just weren't getting eaten. We were getting lazy follows. You could watch them come. You could see their redfish, their head, like come out of the water, wouldn't eat it. And actually before that, I mean, we weren't seeing a lot of fish. Well, and so today, let me just start at the beginning. We were out there at the crack of dawn when the sun came up. Very little bait fish, very little action on the surface. And then as the sun hit the water, man, it just started coming alive. Boom, boom, boom. And then there were mullet everywhere. And then after that point, we started getting some lazy follows on top. He switched to a soft plastic and just got hit and hit and hit. And I even made the comment, I was like, I should tie on a paddle tail, but I was just too lazy to tie a knot. I kind of stuck with what I was doing. But yeah, man, like Scott said, switch it up a little bit if all the signs are there. And then there's also that question has to do with what time of year it is. So right now, the water temperatures have dropped. The first day of autumn is coming up. The days are getting shorter. Every place I went to today was just swarming with mullet. The bay from shore to shore, side to side, there was life everywhere we went today. So today I'm more likely to move because there's options. Mm-hmm. In the heat of summer, if you find a spot with mullet where a lot of bait fish and you're not seeing them widely dispersed across the bay, then I'm going to stick with that, man, for hours and hours. Just keep working it, go from side to side. You hit them in the middle, you hit the perimeters, and a little more patient. At this time of year, I'm not that patient because I know I have a lot of options out there. So kind of a tough question to pin a direct answer down.
No, that's why I liked it. And Perry is commenting right now. One of Dean's favorite lines when it ain't happening. Let's take a ride.
Take a ride.
Let's take a ride. The one thing I was thinking about on this, guys, is like if I see everything that Dean just talked about, and I have recently, and it's been one day maybe or one moment, you're catching them, the next you're not. There is that temptation. Well, there's bait here. There's bait everywhere around me. Maybe take a longer drift into a little deeper water because I don't know, Scott, how much you subscribe to this, but I do subscribe to if there's bait, let's say 300-400 yards from the shoreline out, maybe there's something hoarding that bait, kind of on the edge. So that was the first thing I thought of. You see bait everywhere, it looks good. Maybe just bump out a little bit just a little bit at a time and try, but maybe you don't subscribe to that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like he's talking about the bait was all around him. You know,
Yeah.
he was covered up in it. I thing you could do is start watching the bait really close and see if it's being pushed anywhere. You know,
Mhm.
if you're on mullet, if they're getting real tight together, you know, shrimp start jumping around a little bit.
Mhm.
That'll clue you in that there's some game fish there somewhere. If they're all just kind of milling about and not really acting like they're scared, you know, nervous of any kind, then maybe it is time to move on.
Mhm. Dean, I know I think I talked to you about this not too long ago, probably about a month. This was exactly the situation I was in. I bumped outside a little bit. Maybe it was just dumb luck, but had two big, that real big 25-inch trout that I caught that I showed you, and then a couple of others just out a little bit, just off a little bit. Do you subscribe to that at all?
I mean, anything is a good option. You got to keep going. One thing interesting that Scott said, which doesn't happen that often, but there is
An ass.
there is a huge difference in the way those mullet are behaving. This morning they were getting scattered. Boom, boom, man. They were getting like not really blown up from the bottom, but man, they were just nervous, moving everywhere. A lot of times you'll see giant schools of mullet. They're just there. I mean, they're just lingering. The light hits them right. I mean, they're under the boat. They're lazy. They're not getting spooked. In that situation, I give up on those guys real quick.
Yeah.
But I mean, I work them over from side to side. There's days, you know, I try not to use the troll motor to run in on them too hard. I use the pole to push if the wind isn't pushing me around too much. If it's easy to hold your position, if it's easy to move around those schools, that helps. Some days that's not always an option. You know, some days you got to put the pole down and be patient, let things come to you. And patience is not one of my finer virtues.
We've established that.
Well, now
By the
Dean
way-
said something I agree with.
Oh wow! Oh wow! Worlds are colliding. worlds are colliding here. And I asked that question specifically to start, you know, here because the next question I felt I almost got them within 5 minutes of each other, but the next question I received is very much associated with this. I had a guy just ask me, why do you guys go back to a spot later in the day? I've seen a lot of people. He's heard us talking about Dean. I'll start with you here. Like, you know, whether you caught fish or not, probably if you didn't catch fish, and I've done it, you know, I'm kind of rubbing my chin a little bit. I'm like, let's go back to where we started. I know you've done it, Dean. What makes you do that?
Yeah, I read that on the lineup and I was thinking about it and I was like, I'm like running out of gas and I'm headed back to the marina. There's a lot of different reasons, but I mean, at a different time of day, you can go back to one of your favorite spots and it wasn't happened 2 or 3 hours ago. And then it could absolutely happen then. So, I mean, at that point, and I'll tell the guys on the boat that sometimes, and when I give up on a spot, I'll tell them, it's like, man, I said, we may come back to this later. Let's go try something out. So if it's just one of those things, one of those areas that has all the ingredients that you know, you got confidence in, you know, you've caught fish there before, I will leave it alone for a while and come back to it. And then, you know, I'll have that idea on my mind and you go somewhere else and the fish dictate otherwise. You know, you might not ever come back, but I mean, those are all options. There's reasons to go back if it's got all the ingredients, if the tide changes a little bit, if it's dropping, if it starts moving later, and your favorite little honey hole, man. I mean, I tend to go around the circuit and hit the spots that I really like.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get hung up on one and you never move all day. Some days you hit everything you can, and some days you run out and you start all over again.
Scott, he just hit on the 2 reasons I go back. I always try to answer these questions in my head before I give them to you, just how I would do it. And it's got two things that would make me go back to a spot. Number one, he just said it. It's kind of a honey hole. It's a place where I've caught fish before, and I know there have been fish there, and there are consistently fish there. And number two, he didn't mention it, but I'm curious on your thoughts. If I'm at this spot early and there's just a lot of traffic, a lot of racket, maybe boats, kind of disturbing things, I'm like, let's just get out of here. And maybe it'll settle down later. But I'm curious on your thoughts. What makes you go back to a spot later in the day?
Yeah, for me, it's usually the tide level. If we're talking Poland for redfish, yeah, it's a little too shallow right now. Get a little more water on it. The fish are falling off into the deeper holes, and I can't really see them. And then get a little more water in there, and then it picks back up, and they spread back out on a flat. On the jetties with the tarpon and on the beachfront, I find areas that are holding a lot of bait, and I hang out there, and nothing's really happening. The tarpon aren't there. The tide's not moving. It's a dead tide.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go back to that area. And that's why I use electronics for all the time on the jetties. If I'm rolling down the jetties in the morning and there's zero tide movement, right at the top or the bottom, I'm going to slow roll the jetties anyway and be watching my side scan and see where the bait is. If it's at the middle of the jetties or the end or the base, where's the most of it. And then once I know the tide's moving later, I can swing back by there and pull up, knowing full well I got bait.
Yeah.
That the tarpon are probably going to start feeding once the tide gets to moving.
That's a good strategy, no matter tarpon or otherwise on the jetties. I mean, I like that. And you see it, Dean, from I think it's called Max Fishing or maybe Makes Fishing. Y'all ever tell yourself, I'm not stopping until I see some solid signs of fish activity, like even passing up some favorite spots? For me, I do, but generally only when I feel like I got to get somebody on some fish. I want to make sure I find the or get myself on some fish, some solid signs.
Yeah. I mean, there's days I will pass through an area or pull up on it and just leave real quick. You pull up, you shut down, you drift a little bit, and you're just not feeling it, and I give up on it real quick sometimes especially like this time of year on weekdays when there is nobody out there. Unbelievable how deserted the water has been the last 2 days. School starts, it's dove season, people thinking about deer season, kids in school, and they got the family problems going on. There is nobody out there.
Got the family problems going on.
So that when I know that the next spot I go to is not going to have anybody there, and the spot after that is not going to have anybody there, I will give up real quick because I know I got the whole bay to myself today.
I didn't even ask y'all. I know you both were on the water today. What are you seeing out there? And we'll get to what Scott do and Dean do later. But I mean, in terms of like transitions, we talked about the.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm seeing more speckled trout on the flats for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, caught a beautiful speckled trout today on a top water. And so yes, as the water temperature drops and the days get shorter, the flats on Redfish Bay are summer in the hot months. Speckled trout live what they're going to live, and redfish are where they're going to be. Redfish stay on the flats, they stay on the shallows. Trout are along the channels, the edge of the drop-offs, 4 to 6 feet of water. They're deeper. Right to when we get from this time of year for the next 2 to 3 months, there's speckled trout will intermingle with those redfish. They will be in the same places, and you'll pull up on a spot that you've been catching redfish for the last 3 months, and there will be speckled trout there now.
What are you seeing, Scott?
A whole bunch of tarpon today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We had 9 hookups today, so
I bet it was.
Oh,
I was dreaming of them jetties while I was running around the flats today, man. It was zero wind. Good tide movement. It wasn't too strong. It wasn't dead. Believe it or not, brand new tarpon fisherman, Chris from Sawgrass Rods came down and fished with me today, and brought me some new rods and to try out, and some tarpon rods we're working on. He walks up to the front of the boat. We pull up on the rocks. The tarpon are rolling, and I'm like, all right, we're here.
So just because they're rolling doesn't really mean that they're feeding, but we're in the right spot here. The tide's moving good here. Rigged him up here. Throw this little DOA, terrorize. I'm turning around to tie one on for myself, and I hear a splash. And I look back. I said, "Was that your first cast?" And he said, "Yep." And he swooped up the tarpon. Very first cast that he had.
Dang.
So
Dang.
And it was good until the tide kind of quit moving on us on up about noon, and then it slowed down a good bit. We were getting thumped pretty regular.
You get into the boat?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
We got 3 of them to the boat. 2 of them to the leader, and then they came off once they're beside the boat. About to unhook them anyway. And then one, we got one in the boat. It's a little small one, so we got to pick it up and hold it and get a good picture out of it. So it was all good. A lot of fun. Saw tons of them. Saw some jacks. Marked a bunch of fish hanging down low on the bottom. Looked like a bunch of redfish down there. We didn't really mess with dropping down to them. But yeah, everything's looking much better. I was out Thursday and Friday after the storm last week. It went dead calm, like we were talking about last week. It's going to be calm.
Yeah.
And the water was just rushing, absolutely rushing out of the bay, and it looked like chocolate milk. It was nasty.
Wow.
There was a spot outside Pascavallo where it looked like it went on for miles. It was just chocolate water. It was like a river going out into the Gulf. It was kind of wild looking. It was clear water on both sides of it, and there's chocolate water down the middle. But yeah, it was. I saw a few fish those days, but not much. And now it's settled back down, and it's looking pretty damn good right now.
So the water's clear too in both y'all spots.
Yep, water's cleared up. It took a little bit, but it finally did clear up. But that one day I was out there Friday, I guess Thursday, the water dropped like 3.5 feet in the amount of time that I was out there. It was.
But the tides are still up generally, aren't they?
They're up, but they were up over the docks when I left in the morning. And then when I came back, it had dropped 3 feet in a matter of about 9 hours.
Dang. There's a couple of questions. There's one I have about the season we're in. But before we get to the Bull Reds, on the comments here on our live feed, getting a lot of talk about duck season, Dean. Getting a lot of talk about duck season and teal season and how to handle them and all that. I just kind of stay, unless it's something that I know I'm on some fish there. I just avoid those duck blinds and stuff, but they're all over right now too. How do you handle that?
Man, I mean, I just, some days I'll drift within range of them, but I give them a lot of distance.
That's what I do.
And the thing about duck season, okay, early season, you're going to intermingle with some duck hunters. Here in Redfish Bay, they tend to be concentrated in certain areas. So I just stay out of those areas. But, there are going to be a lot of traffic running around. There's going to be a lot of reason to not fish there anyway. But once you get to the later season, I mean, those dudes are out of there by 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And the best fishing is going to be around noon or 1 o'clock during the late season. So, I mean, that changes as it goes on. But I give the hunters their space. I mean, I find other places to fish. There's options. You don't have to be in there. One of the biggest ones over here in Redfish Bay, man, around Lighthouse Lakes and South Bay, it is historical duck hunting. It's loaded with ducks, and it just happens to have a kayak launch, and it's a kayak park with paddling trails. So there tends to be a lot more controversy with the kayakers and the duck hunters than the motorboats out there. So
that could be problematic.
Well, I mean, it has existed for many, many years now, and it's just, there's no reason to get dramatic. There's no reason to start some controversy. There's no reason to get hot-headed with people. The kayaks, I mean, and so let's look at it from both sides.
Yeah.
The kayaks are going to kick up ducks. If you're a duck hunter and you're getting mad at a kayaker for being in your area, That's probably just, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Boats running through those areas. Ducks are not a dumb bird. They're very, very smart. They learn to avoid those boxes. They learn what decoys are. It doesn't take long for the birds. And some of those birds that have come back for season after season, they're very, very smart. The young ones, they get shot first, and then you're left with them. So the guys that get upset about kayakers paddling through their area, I mean, it's not going to ruin your duck hunting. It's absolutely not going to ruin your day. And then you got the guys in the kayaks that are, upset about airboats and stuff running through there. Just move over a couple 100 yards. Go to areas away from the duck blinds. There's ways to deal without getting controversial. And the thing about it is, I mean, if you get pissed off at them, you're not going to change the world. You can sit out there and you can yell and scream at all the people in the world. You're only going to piss yourself off. You're only going to ruin your own day. So if you want to ruin your own day, go out there and get a bad attitude. Otherwise, it's duck season.
I've done that a time or two.
You just, in the famous words of, what was his name? Can't we all just get along?
Not that famous.
Well, yeah, no, he's a luminary.
He's a luminary. Can't we all just get along? That wasn't Jesse Jackson, was it?
No, that was that dude that got beat down in LA.
You gotta be more specific than that. Oh, yeah, I can't remember.
Rodney King.
Can we all just get along? So yes, I knew Scott would know that. He's a historian. Yeah, I mean, the airboats are the only thing and that's going to be there all year long anyway. I stay away from the duck blinds as well. But the airboats just irritating because then they're running all over Tarnation, all over the bay just to get to those blinds, and that's a mess. And I mean, the duck hunters, they get there and then they're sitting in their blind. They run their boats to get there. They run them to get out. It's not a showstopper for either side. It's really not. You can coexist out there, but it will surface in the next couple of months.
It's going on right now pretty soon.
Anyway,
typically, like for Poland, like Eric was asking about Poland in those spots. What I was always doing, like Galveston, and I had a bunch of them back in that marsh that I always fished around greens and piers, and I knew when the duck season was, and typically they're going to be done by about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I would run out and I would fish the outer edges. I would fish the outside where there weren't any duck hunters or weren't any ducks. I'd fish an open shoreline, pole that, spend my first 2 or 3 hours of my morning doing that. I'd see all of them picking their decoys up and leaving. And then it was time to go back in the marsh, let things settle down a little bit and then get back there. I did have one funny one in Pierce where these guys, nobody was hunting back in Pierce at the time. There weren't any ducks back there for one. I mean, there just weren't any, there really wasn't a reason to hunt back there. And I come poling around a corner and these guys are squatting in the bushes and they got all their decoys out and I couldn't see them from where I was coming. They were up in a cove. And when I turned the corner in the cove, they start yelling at me and cussing and carrying on and firing their gun in the air, doing all this. It's stupid. And so I just pulled out away from them and went around them. And as I'm pulling down the shoreline past them, I look up and I see this boat is just floating out across the open, big, huge lake of
karma.
And it's just out there floating. Nobody in it. And I watched it as I pulled down the shoreline and it floated all the way across. And we're talking Pierce, that big lake is probably half a mile across or better and a soft flood bottom.
Hey, y'all need
I
help?
just watched it float all the way over there. And I just kept bowling. And a little while later, I see them all standing outside that area where they were duck hunting. They're all standing there with their hands on their hips looking across there. And their boat was all the way in the marsh on the other side.
That's one of those when people say, they go, huh.
That's when you should have pulled back in front of them and then pulled around and say, "Hey boys, what's happening?
What's happening? What's happening? What you up to?
How's it
Y'all need a
going?
ride?
You don't
How
need
was
some
your
help?
hunting? How
Yeah.
was your hunting today?
there is a actually, let me ask this question real quick from Perry, our friend Perry. Extremely important question. Where do you get breakfast tacos in Aransas Pass? There's 2 or 3 places, Dean. Obviously San Juan would be one easy one. They sell tacos.
San Juan is number 1. Definitely homemade tortillas. Best
Here's
taco.
the game changer.
The only thing, and so number 2 is Guadalajara down by HEB. The only reason that will make me not go to San Juan and go to Guadalajara if the line is too long.
All right, so I got you hooked up. You know, it's in my blood. San Juan. Here's the game changer for San Juan. They sell breakfast tacos all day. So what I do sometimes is we'll go eat there, or I'll go eat with you and Carrie, and I'll get a couple of breakfast tacos to go, and that way I can just zap them at the trailer and don't have to go buy them in the morning. So that's the game changer for San Juan. Guadalajara is very good.
That makes no sense, man. Fresh tacos, man. Come on. We have a taqueria on every corner in Aransas Pass.
And then Tacos del Oro. Tacos del Oro.
Yeah, Taco del Oro is badass too. But I mean, even if it's on, an HEB tortilla, it's still going to be good in the morning. But yeah, man, San Juan is, you could just open up the tortilla, the taco, throw the insides away and eat the tortilla. It's like a little slice of heaven.
And Parkoff is getting us some taco trays. It's going to be in some of the silent auctions, those Bite Me logo taco trays. So it all comes together.
I gotta talk to Parkoff. I gotta find out if he can make those trays in different dimensions. My console is different on my new boat, and I don't know if that's the option. I need a custom taco holder.
We're looking at different size tacos.
Yeah, different size.
I need a larger taco tray.
You're gonna have a hell of a lot of tacos on that boat.
You know what you need is one like with a little slot so you could put a 6-pack in there. You just stack them up.
Yeah, we are the taco kings. There's no question about that. I always bring the tacos. Anyway, so here's the other part about the season we're in. Scott, I'm gonna start with you here because I think this is a good question, and it's kind of it's popping right now from what I've seen on some of the reports and stuff. And he was asking about bull redfish spawning patterns, and the question I think is interesting because he talks. Well, actually, he said my dream is to catch a 40-inch plus redfish, and good luck. That's a heck of a thing if you can experience that. But he read they really only spawn at night. So does this mean the best time to catch them is in the evening or at night? And what are your experiences with that? And I have an answer in my head, but you're the expert. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know that they only spawn at night. They spawn on incoming tides. The biggest incoming tide is usually around a full moon. So like right now, that incoming tide overnight, that's probably when they're at their best. Redfish spawn on the beachfront, around passes, around the jetties, and they spawn usually late August, September, October, that range. If there's a storm like there was last week, that would have been the perfect time. If it's safe enough to get out there wherever you are, you're getting that big push of an incoming tide. Hell, we had 4-foot tides around here, and they'll spawn on those big incoming tides around the storms. And what it does, it carries their eggs back further into the marsh, and they have a better spawn when we have a big storm like that. Without a storm, they're going to spawn around the full moon, dark moon, whenever we have the best tides. And it's going to occur on the incoming. So whatever the timing is at that point for the incoming tide, like last night, I think it started coming in around midnight. So yeah, they probably did spawn overnight and allowed them to bring it on in. But catching a 40-inch bull red, it doesn't have to be around the spawn. I mean, they live here year round. They're out on the beachfront. They're around the jetties, just inside the jetties over here. A lot of people catch them.
And so was
was
this who was it? Who'd you say, John? Who we
I
talking
don't
about?
have the name in front of me.
Okay.
I usually get DMs.
Was it land-based fishing or boat?
No, okay. I'm glad you asked that, because I think he said because the spawn that he has a better chance of finding them in the bays. And so, like what Scott's saying is, like, of course, yes, beachfront or jetties or whatever. I'm guessing, because I don't have it in front of me. I just wrote it down.
The thing
that he's talking
about
we might have a better chance, in the inshore.
the thing about 40-inch bull reds, they just don't enter the bays that often. I mean, it is going to be a rare occurrence to hook one in the bays. Redfish they have two specific life cycles, from 0 to 33, 34 inches. They will frequent the bays and the flats. When something in their brain shifts gears and they become mature breeding adults, they go offshore and they live their life offshore. But if he wants to catch a 40-inch red, the easiest way to do it, I mean, there's probably other ways to do it. A great way to do it is get a nice, like 9-foot surf casting rod, but not necessarily a surf casting with a big long handle, just a really long casting spinning rod. Put a 4000 series spinner on there with some 30 or 40 pound braid. You get a 3-ounce silver spoon, and you go to the Port Aransas jetties and you walk on those rocks and you be patient and you find schools of mullet that are blowed up. And you'll see, I mean, there's times when those schools come up on the surface, you will see the fish. And if you cast on a good ripping tide, and another thing that's at the Port A jetties, there's Scott may know, what's the little rock piles that are perpendicular to the jetties? They break the current. They keep the jetties from getting washed out underneath them. There's
I just call them the spurs here.
Spurs, and so it creates these upwellings. I mean, as you're walking down the jetties, you'll see the current, and then you'll see these areas where the water is just getting pushed up to the surface, these giant upwellings. Throw around those things with a big silver spoon, and you will hook you a bull red. We have done it many, many times. My Italian friends that would come over from Italy, they would come in September, right now, this time of year, and every afternoon we would fish the flats. We would go over there at 3 o'clock, spend the afternoons walking on the rocks, and we caught buku bull reds, casting big spoons and hitting them on the surface. And then when you're hitting them up high on those spoons like that, you're not hooking them on the bottom where they blow up. You don't have to decompress them. When you release them, they swim away good. They don't float. They don't what is it when they inflate? Isn't there a term for that?
Oh, well,
I'm in a state of confusion today. My terminology is off today. But yeah, so we hooked them, on the spoons up near the surface within 10 feet of the top, and they release great, and they're there to be had starting right now for the next month.
Scott, he just laid out that perfectly. But you guys always get, you talk to your clients or your friends, and they say, I really would like this, whether it's a big trout or whatever. By the way, the next topic is going to be interesting as well. But if somebody calls you and says, my dream has been to catch a 40-inch trout, what are you doing? And is it any different from what?
Trout?
I mean, 40-inch redfish. 40-inch.
We really be dreaming now.
My dream is catch 40-inch, but like a 40-inch redfish. Is it any different, or what are some other options that you would think about?
Well, I mean, if we just got to go do it, a cut mullet or a sardine soaked at the end of the jetties over here is almost 100%. I mean, there's bull reds around the end of our jetties all the time. Same thing on the beachfront, just out past the breakers on the beachfront, you can run into them out there as well. I've got them here just inside the bay, just inside the jetties. They're there almost every day throughout the summer. Those mixed in with jacks. You got to get through the jacks to get to the bull reds.
Yeah,
throwing lures into them is tough because the jacks get to it first. But if we cruise around out there and we start watching our depth finder and watching all the fish finders and all that, I can locate schools of bull reds hanging lower underneath those bait balls in the jacks, and we can drop heavier jigs down to those and jig them up. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. The couple of exceptions to the beachfront jetty thing is, like Franklin mentioned, go into Louisiana. I mean, that's what I did for years, guiding over in Louisiana. The big bull reds do get in the marsh over there, and they hang out. My favorite time was January, February. The water would clear up, and you could sight cast to gigantic bull reds in a foot and a half, 2 foot of water. You can do the same thing in Baffin. Baffin has what they call the ghosts, and there's schools of mature bull reds, but Baffin is so far away from any of the passes that those reds never actually go out into the Gulf, and they just stay in Baffin, and they're available on the shorelines over there. You can sight cast to them, and this is a really good time of year. Once it cools off a little bit, they'll start hanging out on the shorelines better. There's some guides over in that area that's one of the things they specialize in, is finding those.
I'm telling you, and I know what Dean just said about not necessarily coming into the bays. I've caught a ton in Sabine, man, which is obviously near Louisiana, but I know they come in there. I've caught a ton of bull reds, kind of in the bay, near the bay, on that little pass over under the bridge, and that, I mean, so I guess it's just kind of like what you said, Scott. It's sort of situational on the bay system.
It depends on which bay you're in. Where I fished over there around Fouchon, that area, and over on the Boot in Louisiana, the marsh is the open Gulf. I mean, there's really not much in between. It gets a little shallower, but you can sit in there and look at offshore oil rigs from inside the bay. And there's not, all the barrier islands along that section are gone now, and it's the redfish just kind of move in and out. All those big bull reds, they just slide right over the sandbars that used to be islands and slide up into the bay and hang out. And they'll, like I said, I found them in there all through January and February. I know they're in there different times of the year, but that was just my favorite because it was the clearest water of the year.
Yeah. All right. So this is one I said we were going to get to earlier, and Dean was talking about finding some trout on those flats. And it's a perfect question, Dean. Now, look, obviously you're in your bay system, but you've been all over. And so maybe you can just speak to this in general. And then Scott wanted to know if shallow water is always best for looking for big speckled trout. And I could tell this was a guy that has just seen all these pictures, because I'll read the question. He said, John, can you ask these guys? I always see pictures of someone catching a big speckled trout in shallow water. Why is it always wade fishermen with the big trout, and why is it always in shallow water? What if you don't like to wade fish? I think this is kind of one of the blessings and curses of Facebook, and the social media, because you're going to catch that big trout. You want it to, those guys that put the rod in their mouth and all that stuff. I mean, it's like, it's few and far between, but the question itself is not bad. Why is shallow water best to look for big trout?
I mean, and it's not always in the ultra shallow. I mean, you could be waist deep wade fishing, you can be ankle deep sight casting to them, but there's plenty of big trout, the 28, 30 inchers that are caught in 4 to 6 feet as well. I mean, it's not specific to one area like that. Maybe they just look better in the pictures whenever you're knee deep. And
I think that's part of it.
But there is something to be said for getting out and going super slow and being very stealthy, very quiet, very patient if you want that big trout. It's a very suspicious creature, man. They don't tolerate a lot of noise. They're gonna, if you see a speckled trout, an old wise trout like that, they already saw you. I mean, you don't really sneak up on them without being very, very patient and very, very slow. There's days you get them. I mean, they get careless too, just like every other fish. They're in a good feeding mood. They're gonna be a little more reckless. But the big trout that we sight cast to, January and February over here, more than likely you're going to be out of the boat and you're going to be walking and you're going to have been standing pretty still for a pretty good amount of time to creep up on a fish like that. They seem to be old and wise.
Yeah, Scott, it seems like it's more the tactic than the depth of the water. The tactic being, as Dean just said, moving slow, being patient, casting.
Yeah. Well, first off, my biggest trout came from the boat. So there is that.
No, yeah.
It was about 3 or 4 feet of water, and we were fishing shoreline. There was a slick popped up, and I threw right in the middle. It was a little small slick, about paper plate size, and threw into it and hooked my biggest trout. I've caught a lot of big trout wading, though, a lot more wading than from the boat. That's just, it's a function of, like I said, being quiet and being able to work an area completely and thoroughly and covering every inch of it. When you're in the boat and you're moving, you're making noise, whether you think you are or not. The boat's making some noise. I see a good many trout while I'm poling, and my poling skiff is dead quiet. I mean, it's really, really quiet. Every one of those fish knows that we're there before we see them.
Isn't that amazing?
We'll see them, they're laying in the grass,
Yep.
and it's usually springtime, and they're laying up shallow in that grass, and you see this big black log, and you start casting to it, and it's already starting to move away. It's just easing off. They hardly ever just take off. Like when you spook reds, they just flee and, take off, make a big mud puff. I'll see those trout, and they just creep away from you real slow and easy, just moving away. If you're out walking, you got a better shot at it because you're not moving as fast and you're covering the water more thoroughly, and you're casting beyond what you can see.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen the shadow or the outline of a big trout that's already moving away from me, and I put that bait right in front of them. I mean, right in front of them, like on their nose, and they're like, "Man, I wasn't born yesterday."
You ain't fooling them like that.
Wow.
But I still do it. I still try.
Oh, everybody does.
I had an area in Galveston that was all grass on the North Shoreline, and in the springtime there was about a 2 or 3 week period where they would get up there, and I'd be pulling along with some customers, and they're fly fishing. And I start seeing them, and they're just easing off like that. As the boat's coming up, they're easing away. My next day off, I would go over there and I would power pole down and just stand on the boat with my fly rod. I was really determined I wanted to catch one of those fish on fly. And I would stare at the water, pick it up, drift down just a little bit, pick a light wind day, drift down 15, 20 yards, put it back down again, and stare at every inch of grass and try to find another. And I would see them from time to time as I'm doing that, make one cast to them with a fly rod, not making a lot of noise, and they would disappear. They're just smart fish, man. When they're up shallow like that, they're really exposed, and I think they feel that they're exposed, and they're not going to tolerate much.
Yeah, and I've told you on this podcast that's one of my favorite ways in those flats like that. I call it hopscotching. Just a little here, put it down, pick it up, put it down. Now you do catch fish, but not those big ones are. It's a different story, man. That's a different story. They'll see you. But trout. Just to answer his question, fully, if you are in your boat, Dean, and you're in deeper water, there will be big trout around you. Like they're not just in the flats, they're not just shallow. It's just a matter of getting to the right spots.
Yeah, they're just harder to catch.
Mm-hmm.
It's smarter.
But deep water, Scott. You said you were what, 4 to 6 feet?
When I got mine, it was 3 to 4 feet, something like that.
Yeah, I mean there are big trout everywhere. I think it's just a product of social media and such. But
the biggest trout I've ever caught was blind casting a fly. Was walking along the edge.
Fly?
Yeah, a legit 30-inch trout that I hooked, fought, landed it, and as we're posing it up to take pictures, it spits a trout out of its mouth. that it regurgitated this trout. So we're sitting there taking pictures, and I'm holding the trout in my hand that comes out of the fish's mouth. And as I'm holding this fish, the little trout, like 8-inch speckled trout that this 30-incher ate, it starts kicking in my hand. It was still alive. It was not alive enough to swim away, but this trout had just eaten that trout, and then it ate a fly. And I got pictures and video of the whole scenario. I'll post them up on the Bite Me later.
Man, I would love to see that
and show you. Could not believe that I'm sitting there holding it, and the thing started kicking, and I was like, this trout is still alive. So yeah, it had just eaten that giant meal, and then it ate a fly.
It goes to show you the whole big bait, big fish. Yeah, both. Yeah, both. Well,
yeah, explain that.
In one sitting,
Yeah.
I'll have a little bitty fly like that and a big
maybe he wanted to fly for dessert.
That's right. He wanted dessert. Oh man. All right. What would Scott do, and what would Dean do? I'm gonna be in that Freedom Boats tournament on Saturday morning as we're starting to set up. I'm gonna get off the water early because I don't want to leave everybody and all the volunteers and my wife with everything. But I'll be off the water about 11. The feeding frenzy starts at 3. So I've been looking pretty diligently because I'm taking my 2 boys out and see if we can play in that Freedom Boats tournament. But I was looking at the weather. We say this a lot, kind of dealer's choice, Scott. At least Friday, it's like that. Saturday, maybe a little more wind where I'm looking, but not a thing that would scare anybody away. What would you do this weekend? Because hey, by the way, this is a big what would Scott do and what would Dean do? We have people coming in from all over, and a lot of them are going to want to fish Friday and Saturday, or maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So the pressure is on, boys. We got guys that have maybe never fished Port O'Connor, but specifically never fished down in Aransas Pass and Rock.
Man, I got podcasters.
Pressure is on.
I got podcasters fishing with me Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
That's
and so Zeke on Sunday, I was like, "Are you sure, dude?" I was like, "This the morning after." I was like, "Let's think about this for a minute."
Yeah.
And he said, "We do the best we can." So, but yeah, with everybody coming to town,
I've had so many people.
It's going to be a fun weekend.
I'm going to drag my boat down there, or I'm going to book Dean, or I'm going to book a guide. And I've had some people, I know, Scott, you got some people that are probably going to book you on Thursday or Friday and then come down from there. So no pressure, Scott. We'll start with you. What would you do?
For me, looking at that forecast, man, you know me, I'm going to be out there playing with a tarpon. If I couldn't do that and I needed to go catch some redfish and trout, I'm going to look for them up shallow, like Dean was talking about. The water temperature has cooled off a little bit. It's probably going back up right now some because we've got light winds and a lot of sun. So maybe looking along the drop-off edges for the trout and the redfish being up shallow early in the morning. We've got an incoming tide all day today. I'm not really sure. I hadn't looked for the weekend to see what the schedule is there. But yeah, I would stay shallow for reds and then go ease over to a drop-off to pick up my trout. Flounder should be staging around the mouths of any cuts leading out into the open water, and go beat the hell out of the bottom over there and try to pick up your flounder. I think that's in that tournament, isn't it? Is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. The stringer is 3 trout, 2 red, 1 flounder.
Yeah, I'd probably fish the drop off first and try to get my trout first if I was in that tournament, and then go prowling around looking for reds once the sun got up a little, and then the wild card's always the flounder.
You're telling me that.
I'd wait and see if there was an outgoing tide, and if I could pick up an outgoing tide, I'd get around the mouth of some little cut somewhere and start.
So Scott, you want to go ahead on and tell him where to catch a flounder in Redfish Bay? you want to just
go? Why, you got a secret spot? You got a secret spot, Scott?
Well, I don't know, man. You can.
I don't want 75 boats.
You can keep it a secret with John, or you can tell the world right now.
So you got a flounder spot in Redfish Bay?
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
We told the story last week or 2 weeks
I
ago.
know. I know. I know.
I don't want to hear it again.
All right, Dean.
Dean was telling me
pressure-
when we were doing that, he's like, "Ain't no flounder around here. Ain't no flounder around here."
We don't want to hear it again. I thought we established
Hey,
that
Dean,
we don't
guess
want
what
to
I
hear
got?
it again.
I got me a flounder.
Yeah, he was like a happy, like a little girl. Got my flounder.
I
Got
didn't know
my
that was. I didn't know that
flounder.
was. I didn't
Like
realize that
6
was in
times.
Redfish Bay. I didn't
Oh
know
yeah,
that
it
was
was his
there.
backyard. We were over
Got
in
me a
Lighthouse Lake.
flounder.
Dean, hundreds
Wow.
are coming in, and they're hanging on your every word right now. They've never fished, or most of them very, very few times. Some of them.
Man, you can throw the dart at the map this weekend. I mean, it's all good. Got a bunch of guys coming in, going to be kayaking around BNR Flats, South Bay, Lighthouse Lakes. No duck hunters out there yet. So it's a free for all. Miles and miles of space, beautiful wind, beautiful weather, perfect time. The thing that's against us this weekend is we're going to be, tonight's the full moon.
Yep.
So
That's what I was going to say.
It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So, man, we're going to be like 5 days behind the full moon. Not a showstopper, but not my favorite.
No.
I'm hoping this is one of those weeks where I'm proven completely wrong. Because if we take an ass whipping this week, the podcast next Tuesday is going to be all about the feeding frenzy. We're not going to talk about fishing. We're gonna talk about what a huge success and what a party it was.
Knock on wood.
And
Knock on wood.
Or I'm going to be absent next Tuesday.
Hey, I got a thing. Now, 4 days after the moon might not be too bad, but the first couple of days, 4 or 5 days might not be too bad, but the first couple of days could be rough after the moon. That's
All
my
of them.
experience.
All of them. But
I think the full moon is actually tonight.
Yeah, I think it's tonight.
Hey, and it's a partial lunar eclipse also, so it's only going to be half bright.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, man, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a lot of fun getting this stuff together. I know you guys are going to be, everybody's going to be wanting to talk to you guys and get your autographs and pictures and have a beer.
I
with
only
you.
sign boobies
And boobies
and not male boobies.
You didn't specify it first, so it's out there.
I can see.
It's on the table.
I can see this. I'm going to bring my Sharpie.
Yeah.
No, I can already. I shouldn't
it's on
have
the
even,
table. It is a possibility.
I shouldn't have said nothing because now here we go.
And just to reiterate,
once he signs it, then you could have Mike Ashworth do a tattoo of it.
Yeah. You see this tattoo on my boobie? That's Dean Thomas's autograph.
That is nothing to be proud of. That is a drunken, bad decision is what that is.
Yeah, hey, man, can we break out the weed whackerita?
Man, that thing went in the dumpster 10 years ago, man.
I think you told me that story off air.
I wish. I'll tell you what, it's probably a good thing that thing went into retirement somewhere because that's kind of the reason.
Like drinking weed whackeritas that had this oil and gas mixture smell.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Oh, yeah. It was a weed eater motor with a hopper on top of it with a blender.
Yeah, I think you told that story to me once.
Oh my God, dude. That's a contributing factor to the reason of the way I am now.
to being the derelict that I am now.
Yeah. A product of a misspent midlife crisis. How old do you got to be to have a midlife crisis? What's the age for that?
I always laugh. Yeah,
is it too late? It's too late for me.
Yeah, people in their 50s like, oh, he's going through a midlife crisis. In 50s, he's going to be 110? I mean, come on. What's going on?
Yeah, it's too late for me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. All the experts, all the events, casting contests. We're going to have all sorts of great stuff for you. As I mentioned at the top, We're really looking forward to it. We'll be out there early setting up, and we'll be out there late celebrating a successful event, and especially successful for Heroes on the Water and Texas Boys Outdoor. And by the way, only until Friday at noon can you still buy the raffle tickets if you're not going down there online, and that is on the Facebook group page. So don't forget to subscribe, to join that, and then subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. These guys and Caleb, who didn't make it today for a good reason, he's at a kid event, will all be out there. Lots of captains will be out there. Lots of luminaries will be out there, and experts in every field. You guys, looking forward to it. We will see you on Saturday at 3 p.m. at Coasters Outdoors, Coasters Restaurant, and we'll be outdoors under the pavilion for the Bite Me Feeding Frenzy of 2024. You guys, until then, catch them up. We will talk to you next time.
Look out for them Illuminatis.
I thought you were going to